you don't just kill a podcast you love by accident. You look it in the eyes, you sit it down, and you say, we're done. No more. I just can't with you. You make it one of those good breakups. You ever have one of those where you and the significant other leave feeling better, right? You know what I'm talking about. So Cruise Through HTX was that show. It was my love letter to the city that raised me, that built my career. I have lived in the Houston area for all but 3 of my 50 years at the time of this recording, all of my 50 years on this planet. It's pretty much all I've known. And it was really just all about Houston. We're talking about stories, people, spots, events. I loved recording it. It was actually a rebranded podcast from an original podcast called Freddy's Huge Ask Podcast, which really had no focus. It was more of a hobby to keep me busy while I was looking for traditional employment after I left corporate radio at the end of 2021. And I just wanted something to do, and I treated it like it was a full-time job, not really knowing what to do. But then I realized that having a podcast was way different than hosting a radio show that was music-focused, right? So that was how I ended up launching Cruise Through HTX. It was fun. It made sense because, hello, former Houston radio DJ, knows a lot of people, can get access to guests, and it's going to be a success. And it kind of, sort of, but not really was. Now, it wasn't monetized. I did develop a following, a modest one, and it was far better executed than the other show because it actually had a focus, and the focus was Houston. But it was bi-weekly, and I was beholden to people's schedules. And let me tell you something. If you are going to host a bi-weekly podcast all around the year, that's what, 52 weeks, that's 104 episodes, that's 104 people whose schedules you got to coordinate. And if you are married and you got kids that you're driving around and you're trying to be present, you're trying to service your clients. I was working a part-time contract marketing job with the local animal shelter as well. So one no-show became several no-shows, became a postponement, became a cancellation. And then I found myself experimenting with solo episodes. And then I would run feed drops from podcasts in which I was a guest, but it really had nothing to do with Houston. And then it just caught up with me. And so in the summer of 2024, in the summer of 2024, I'd had enough because I'd started 2024 on the wrong track. No show. And then again, more no shows. All the stuff that I talked about. Typical pain points when it comes to hosting a guest interview format. And that ought to be a teachable lesson in case you're thinking about having a show and you're wondering whether or not you want to make it an interview format. It's not easy to get people to agree to whatever time you've got going on, in addition to your actual day job, right? Well, so in summer of 2024, I decided to take a planned hiatus, and then I launched the podcast that you are listening to right now, Your Mic, because I had seen enough terrible advice on LinkedIn, and I decided, well, I can stop shouting at my iPhone and actually do something about it, because I actually know a thing or two. And so I launched Your Mic, a limited run series of 12 episodes. And then at the beginning of 2025, and yeah, this is like a deep dive into Cruise Through HTX. And so at the beginning of 2025, I decided, well, I'm going to do planned seasons, and every season is going to be a theme. And the first season was health and wellness. And it was fun. And it was video focused. And again, highly curated, handful of episodes, and it kind of sort of worked. But during that time, when I was off from your mic, I was like, I really enjoy talking about podcasting. But then Cruise Through HTX, the season of health and wellness, went away, and I'm like, I guess I got to do another season because I can't just pod fade. Here I'm teaching everybody about how not to be a zombie podcast and how not to quit. And here I want to end this show. So I decided that instead of having 2 seasons of each show, that I would do the thing that, one, was most relatable to my business, which is podcasting. My company is Speke Podcasting, and we produce iconic shows for iconic brands. So I'd rather do that than talk about Houston, because there's enough of that. And so this was and is my leap of faith as I start to build somewhat of a reputation in the podcast business. And it's my sort of goodwill to people who may not otherwise hire Speke Podcasting to produce their podcast. Because honestly, you don't need me. You don't need my video team. You don't need us to produce a binge-worthy show for you. You can do all of that on your own. Or you can just hire cheap and go with a VA somewhere in, I don't know, in India or South America. There's a lot of talent over there. Far less expensive. You can do that. You can find somebody on Fiverr. You can find a VA. You just can't. But my heart belongs to podcasting. One of my favorite authors, Robert Greene, talks about your life's task. Podcasting is my life's task. And being the host of Your Mic is part of that life's task. You hear people in the business space talking about one-to-one, one to a few, and then one to many. This is, so far, I'm less than 2 years in, and it's, I would say, one to a few, and it's eventually going to be one to many, because I'm not going to quit at all. And so back to Cruise Through HTX. I decided to end the show and put it on a permanent hiatus. The show's over as it is, as anyone's ever listened to it. I wanted to end it with the season of Powerhouse Pet Owners. As you know, Speke Podcasting is named after 2 of my dogs, Sparrow and Zeke. It's even spelled after their names, Speke. And so my family, my friends, and I were crazy about dogs. And so I decided to, riff on a Houston area business podcast, but center it around pets. And we had fun doing that. Had some friends, former clients, people I've known for a long time, join the show for a very limited run series. Now, is ending the show with 8 episodes the quote unquote right way to end a show? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. What I do know is the right thing to do is to at least tell people who have spent more than 120 episodes listening to Cruise Through HTX, to give those people the respect to let them know that, hey, this is over. And yeah, you hardly heard from me in 2025, and you're hardly going to hear from me in 2026, and that's why the show's over. And if you really want to hang out, then you can listen to this show. And if podcasting's not your jam, and I get it, it's probably not for everybody, you can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, and, it's cool. Not everybody needs to be a fan of me. I get it. Just like not everybody needs to be a fan of you. Not everybody wants my service. Not everybody wants your service. Not everybody wants to listen to your mic. Not everybody's going to want to listen to your podcast. And so I hope that you're listening to this, and if you are on the brink of giving up your show, I would encourage you to not quit just yet. Not yet. You can end it, but do not, for the love of Pete, just quit. You don't want to break up text your listeners. You don't want to just ghost your feed. And if somebody's listening to your show and then they wonder where the heck you are, well, that's not cool. You don't want to 5 months from now be at a conference or be out in public or whatever, and someone's like, hey, whatever happened to that show? You just kind of fell off the map. Not cool, right? So what I want you to do is take your podcast and map out 8 episodes. Why 8? Well, you can sort of shadow what I'm doing. And we're going to riff here, you and me. You're going to map out 8 episodes. The first one is going to be an intro. Okay? You're going to introduce yourself, your podcast, and you're going to explain what's going on and why you're leaving. Episode 2 is going to be, if it's a guest format, somebody that you highly respect that you would love to have on. It could be somebody that's a repeat guest, whatever. Episode 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Episode 8, and I know this is very specific to guest formatted shows, and we'll go there if you're a solo or co-hosted show too. Episode 8 is your final. And that's where you debrief, you share best of moments. So with Cruise Through HTX, I had more than 120 episodes to pull from. And so I took some of the 5 biggest moments or from some of my most favorite moments as well, and I mixed them up into a final episode. And I had an intro, I ran the montage, and then I did the outro, and I said, hey, this is where I'm going to be from here on out. And then you end it. And it could be like a love letter to your audience, because that's what Cruise Through HTX was, a love letter to the people who invested their time for more than 120 episodes. You don't just get to 120 episodes and then ghost your feed. Oh, you know what? I quit. I just got bored with it. And how fair is that? Time is the one thing none of us get back. None of us. So if there's anything you get from this episode about why I decided to quit my other podcast, I hope it's this, that you owe it to the listener. Because at the end of the day, you're not podcasting just for yourself. You're not the main character in somebody's story. Your listener is the main character in their story. Your listener is. And so I owed it to the people investing that time to end it with a beautifully wrapped love letter, perfectly packaged, or at least I think so. Love letter to them and to the city I love, the city that raised me, the city that produced me, and the city that continues to support my business as we continue to grow and expand beyond the Houston area. And so if you'd like some help walking through what might be your final season of your podcast, please hit me up. Do not give up. All right? Don't end it until we have talked. Oh, and by the way, solo episodes, before we wrap, because I did promise you that, if you have a solo episode, upload all of your transcripts into your favorite chat bot, ChatGPT, Claude. I use Perplexity, and then ask to create an 8-episode outline for your final 8 episodes of your podcast series. Again, though, you want some assistance drafting all this together, putting all this together, hit me up. Freddy at spekepodcasting.com. Really appreciate you listening to this episode.